Hi everyone, I hope this video finds you well. I've been hearing from a lot of you this week just kind of about the trials and tribulations you've been having with, of course, starting an online course during a pandemic when no one's school system really has a plan and nobody really knows how things are going to work out. So I'm hoping that with this video, I'll be able to share some information with you, maybe quell your fears a little bit and give you a little more flexibility with our online course. So I already know we're really in deep with Module 1. We're within our last week of this module. So technically week 1 wrapped up last night at midnight and we're finishing up this week. So we're already into that second week. I wanted to encourage you to continue to work on this week and to get caught up so that this week is complete and over and done with. But that brings us into how we're going to have to do business perhaps for the remainder of the course, because I recognize that a lot of you are either in distance learning now, setting up distance learning, or you're kind of in the midst of you don't know what your school system is going to be asking of you in the next couple of weeks. And I don't want that to be an overwhelming stress for you. So I want to ask that you keep communication open with me so that I can do my best to modify and adapt the course as needed for you all. That may mean that we cut discussion posts down a little bit. It may mean that we extend discussion posts past the 2-week mark for the modules. So I'm just going to need some open communication, and I will do the same with you so that we can decide how this works best. I did want to, a couple of folks had questions about the data assignment, because those of you that are in the Carroll County cohort are actually out of school and you don't have a lot of connection with the people that you would need in order to get this data from. I did share with you guys that if you're in the state of Maryland, we actually have the Maryland State Report Card, which is fantastic. And I shared a document on our Module 1 page. I just added it to Section C, which is the overview, and it's called the State Climate Report. And if you open up the State Climate Report, it actually is going to give you all of the information that you need on suspension data. You can see it down here: chronic absenteeism, suspension and expulsion, violence, harassment, bullying, and you can sort by school. So it's already sorted by school, and if you look down through your school system, you'll be able to trace everything across to see what that suspension data was or what the absentee data is, just the information that you need. It does break it down, so you'll be able to see the disaggregated data and see what the numbers are. Remember, in this project, it isn't just about looking at the numbers. It's about calling out the patterns. So whatever data you've been able to collect, no matter how small it is, if you're looking at a couple of different data points, you're basically looking at what are the patterns of those data points and being able to explain them and really look at them in regards to race and ethnicity. And just really being able to fulfill that, just what are the barriers? What are the differences? Okay, so this is actually, as you can see, I put it right underneath that Section C for you, and that's the state climate. If you're outside of the state of Maryland, because there are a couple of you in this group that are, please look at your state report card and see if there's a state climate report. If you're really having a hard time doing that, just use the Maryland State Climate Report. Choose a school, any school at all. Look at the data patterns that you see and analyze it based on that. Okay, so hopefully that will help you guys out a little bit. You won't have to do so much digging and so much research for that. In Section B, you saw there is the list of things to read and view, and I want to remind you all that skim reading is your friend. So I know it gets overwhelming, and I kind of prefaced you in the first video that there's a lot of reading to get the course started. Please do not stress about all of the reading. Skim reading is your best friend because you can read the first sentence of a paragraph and decide, is this worth it to me? Is this something that captures me? In an online graduate level class, you're looking for what applies to what learning you need, what's going to help you fill in the gaps of the things that you need to know. So all of this is available to you, but you can also skim view, kind of put on the video and skip sections a little bit just to grab snippets. Right now, if you're in the middle of doing a ton of work for school or trying to figure out how you're going to do learning in the next couple of weeks, it might be a little bit too much for you to do everything that's offered as a resource in this class. So pick and choose what's most important to you so that you can be an active and viable member of the class. And then the rest of it, I'm sure you'll get to whenever you're on summer break, when you're not nearly as stressed. Which brings me to a couple of other resources that I wanted to share with you. I was looking through some of the discussions and kind of viewing some of the things that you guys have been talking about, and I wanted to make sure I did a little touch on the cultural iceberg and also the cultural proficiency continuum, so that we had these things in our forefront of our minds as we're looking further into race and ethnicity in American education. So if you haven't seen one of these yet, this is a version of the cultural iceberg. And the cultural iceberg is simply a way that we can, I'm going to turn this on to actual slideshow so you can maybe see it a little bit larger. There we go. Let me adjust my viewing screen for you. Perfect. Okay, so the whole idea with the cultural iceberg is that there are parts of people that we can see and understand right away, and that's in our primary awareness, because they're things that stand out about people when we first meet them, things that typically physical features, stuff like that we normally see. What kind of music they like, what kind of literature they might be into, like folk culture types of things, what kind of food their culture eats. But there are so many other things that are underlying in the iceberg, and a lot of those things are listed here in this very detailed iceberg that I'm sharing with you right now. And these are things that are deep culture and out of our awareness. So as we are reading and learning a little bit more about other cultures and race and ethnicity, I want you to really consider some of these things. And I will upload this also, parts of this PowerPoint to help you. A lot of these things that we don't necessarily know are culturally based. These are where the biases start. These are where the barriers kind of take their root, because these are the things that are very different and we have nothing to attach them to. We're not quite sure why there's a difference, but we know there's something different happening. And Coates, in his book, Between the World and Me, talks a lot about these things that are in deep culture. And in the Irving book, also, Waking Up White, there's a lot of the things about deep culture that are in there that really show a difference. The other thing that I wanted to share with you would be, sorry, I'm clicking through because this is a PowerPoint that isn't quite for your group, is this cultural proficiency continuum. So as I was reading some of your posts and things, I was starting to see some of the continuum show up. And if you aren't familiar with the continuum, I also wanted to just bring this to your awareness. So the whole idea of the cultural proficiency was continuum was actually brought out to people by two people, Dr. Campbell Jones, and they were a husband-wife team who worked with a group of consultants to put this together. And it's the way that we behave culturally and where we move back and forth in our cultural learning and cultural understanding. So in cultural destructiveness, which is the lower end of the continuum, that's where you see a difference and you stomp it out. So basically, that's when the culture, like people would say, like, oh, well, that culture doesn't value education. So all of a sudden, it doesn't matter who the kid is from that culture, you perceive that person is not valuing education. Cultural incapacity is the next one, and that's when you see a difference and you make it wrong. And in this idea, it's like, why won't these immigrants learn English? So what they're doing is wrong. Okay, cultural incapacity is what we're experiencing, and it's when we have behaviors such as this. Cultural blindness is when you see a difference and then you act as if you don't see it at all. And this is probably, I think, the most destructive place to be, because this is where a lot of good people tend to land, because they have good hearts and they think that if they don't point out differences, then they're doing the best thing. When we say stuff like, I treat all of my students the same, those are ways that we are culturally blind. We have to recognize that we're different and the difference makes a difference. And that difference that makes a difference is important to who we are and our identities as people. So not being able to see differences really is bringing us down to the lower end of the continuum and is very destructive to people and destructive to our students. These next three are kind of where we would hope to be or hope to get more often. Cultural precompetence is when you see the difference and you know there's a difference, which is great. That's the first step, is knowing, but then you respond inadequately. And this is where we see a lot of our school systems. And this is what data we're looking at to see, is there a majority of office referrals for African American boys or for other cultures? Is there a difference in the way people are being treated in school? So the pre-competence is, you know there's a difference, you just don't know how to respond to the difference yet. Cultural competence is where you see a difference, you understand the difference that the difference makes. So this would be an example of, you have a bunch of different clubs in your school and you recognize that there's an underrepresented population. And so you go out and you invite those students to the club. You invite those voices into whatever the situation is to try to gain a better understanding and to get these students more involved in school. And then, of course, we all wish we could live in the land of cultural proficiency forever. That doesn't always happen because it's a very tough place to be. We're all human and we all have biases. We all have barriers from our childhood that we brought with us through our entire lives. We can mask them sometimes, but a lot of times they come out. And this is where we actually see a difference and we respond affirmatively. We do the right thing no matter what it is. And an example of that is that, we can't all be fluent in Spanish, but there are some basic things that we could do to communicate with parents and to make parents feel comfortable in school. What are some of the ways that we can help students to feel more comfortable in school and really connect families to literacy initiatives? I even think of that, like how do we connect bilingual families to youth literacy initiatives so that they can be a part of their child's upbringing and a part of their child's education? So very important to us that we keep the cultural proficiency continuum. And if this is new to you, I'm hoping that this learning will help you a little bit as we're looking at race and ethnicity. And also that cultural iceberg and considering what are those deep notions of culture that we aren't always comfortable with. We know they're there, but we're not always comfortable with them. How do we bring those in to really tear down our barriers and maybe to stop being so culturally destructive or incapacitated or actually blind in that? Okay, so just to recap, I want your communication, please. If you're a little bit stressed out, let me know. Don't forget, I shared with you the state climate report, so that way you'll have all the data that you need in order to do your research. Don't forget, MSDE report card is always there for us. I know that a lot of this isn't disaggregated as much as you might want it to be, but you'll be able to look down through schools in Carroll County and to be able to check those out. If you want to pick a different school, pick a different school. It's not necessary to do the school you're in. It's fine if you do something different. I'm being flexible with you. Be flexible with me. Share with me things that you would like to see happen, and we'll see if they fit within the confines of our objectives. And as long as we can do that, I'm totally okay with moving and manipulating and extending deadlines, whatever we need to do to make you guys feel a little more comfortable in this time. All right, keep communicating. I really appreciate your time. Have a good day.